It's time for the Grace and Inspiration Podcast with Dan Nzinga.
All right, everybody. Thank you for coming. Welcome to the Grace and Inspiration Podcast. Today's the first one. Thank you for all of you guys who have come to support, and we have a great show. I'm a little bit nervous, but that's okay because it's going to be so awesome that I can't wait. So, first thing I want to start with is before I introduce the guest, is talk about why I called it the Grace and Inspiration Show. So grace for me means many things. You could be gracious, you could be graceful, you could receive grace. But this type of grace I'm talking about is when you're receiving something more than you deserve. So grace is usually when we talk in the Bible talks about grace where love is given where possibly punishment should have been. Something happened, you're like, all right, I forgive you, I give you grace. I'm not going, I let you off the hook or something like that. Similar to that theme is when you're receiving something more than necessarily you deserve or is owed to you. And so I have some, great coaches here today that came to speak with us. I'm not paying them. I feel that's grace. They're giving us grace for giving us this inspiration for coming here. Let's receive the grace because you can get grace and not receive it because you're not focused, your attention is not there. There could be abundance of grace coming to you and not get it. So I really want the name of the show to even be about like this is grace. Okay, this is grace that we're getting. These speakers have spent hours and hundreds of thousands of dollars getting this information, learning, and I hear myself speaking double. Michael came on. Okay, great. By the way, since it's my first one, guys, excuse me for if there's any technical difficulties that show up. Give me grace. So I want to ask you guys for some grace as we give also grace on this call. Bring grace to you, and the inspiration is you're going to hear things that are going to inspire you. The speakers are people that have, like I said, have spent thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars on their education, on learning this stuff, on their transformation, and to graciously give it back to us is such a blessing. And so, without further ado, I want to go introduce each person. I give their names, and then I would let you guys, the speakers, introduce yourself and speak. Just get 1 minute of who you are, so people can get a sense of who you are, and especially in the world of transformation. What work you've done, what do you do? All of them are coaches. Luckily, all of them are also speakers in the inspiration community, which is a grace in itself, again, for more of us. So I can't wait. We have some really great topics to unpack. So be ready to hear. If you have take notes, if you can, they're going to just say some very powerful things, some great things that can help you in your life, in your day, to just understand better how life works and how you can get to your next level of transformation. All right, cool. So the first person I'd like to introduce is Sean Bierman, who is a been a coach and mentor of mine since I started in the coaching space. The first time I was creating my challenge, I asked her to listen up and listen to to critique me, and she said, "You know what, Dan? I'm going to coach you for free, but when I need you, I want you to help me out for something." So that was the first concept, and she coached me for free. That's a lot of grace, and that's what got me into the whole game. It was during COVID. And then a year or so later, said, "Hey, remember that favor I needed from you? I'm doing a seminar in the Dominican Republic. I need you to show up and help me out." The rest is history. And so I definitely on my first show, I said I have to have Sean on my first show, who helped me start this whole journey and my whole transformational coaching before the inspiration what it is today. It was Sean Bierman that was on the phone coaching me, helping me, I never forget that. So, Sean, I want to introduce you first. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me here, but more importantly, thanks for remembering all the pieces of that journey.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, you guys, when you realize that something's not working where you are, and if you stay in that situation that you realize isn't working. And if you don't do anything about the unworkability, then I'm sorry, you give up the right to complain about any of it.
Amen.
And that kind of just, sums up how I work with people. And more importantly, I don't think that any particular person is the perfect one to help or assist with every other person. Sometimes I have the unbelievable blessing of being a conduit through which Dan or Christina can meet other people. Like I've been so blessed to be a conduit for people, and for people to get what they need, but not necessarily from me directly, from someone I introduce them to, because I'm having grace for more than one person around me, you know? And there's just an incredible opportunity to make a difference with others if you're not caught up in that difference has to look a certain way.
Got it. So before I go to Christina, can you give me a little bit more, Sean, on like you personally and where you are, how how people could work for you with you, or what what you're about.
Sure. Well, I'm certified in coaching in every area, but I love working with business owners. And the reason why I love working with business owners is that if we can get their business working and bringing in money, then every other area of life gets easier to make a difference in. Like it gets easier to move results in the health and well being area if you've got the money to spend on supplements, right? Or stuff like that. So, I love working in the area of business. I specialize in certain things, but here's my biggest thing. Like Dan, I have a community of coaches. And like Dan, I know I'm not the perfect person to work with everybody. So when people come to me, I'm out to have them and to help them find their perfect coach. The one that fits their personality, the one that fits their budget, the one that fits what they're trying to cause in the world. Because if you got a really big game, you can't be working with some small bass coach, right? You got to be working with a coach that's as up to big things the way you're up to big things, right? And it's so funny because I was just on the line with someone before this call, and we'd never had a coaching conversation, him and I, and we were meeting for the first time. And the last question he asked me is, "Do you have a coach?" And I said, "Actually, I have several coaches. I don't just have one. I have multiple coaches in different areas." And he goes, "Oh, good, because one of the coaches I asked or I talked to told me the question you have to ask every coach is, 'Do you have a coach?' Because if they don't have a coach themselves, then we already know we're in trouble."
Amen.
Right? So the best of us still have someone that we can go to get that, bouncing the ideas off of and get their proper feedback and stuff like that.
Awesome.
And
Thank
I
you.
left Canada when COVID hit. I moved here to the Dominican Republic, and I've been running my businesses and doing everything out of here ever since. I am the epitome demonstration of what it looks like to cause beach money.
Nice. Cool.
And I
That's
really am tanned. You just can't tell because this wall behind me is not actually white. But really, I'm very dark for me.
all right. Great. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I definitely like just to echo what you're saying about everybody needs somebody. The best barber in the world doesn't cut his own hair.
Mhm.
They still need somebody else to help cut their hair. All right, cool. So I'd also like to introduce Christina, who I actually known also for many years before I was even a coach, before I got in the space of coaching, and she was also helping me in my journey with a lot of wisdom, a lot of notes of wisdom. And so I was also somebody that I learned from. So I wanted to have you as well on the first call as we unpack some other topics. So go ahead, Christina, introduce yourself.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dan. I really do appreciate you seeing me and allowing me to be in your space. And I'm really grateful to be here. And I love that it's called grace because grace is one of the biggest things that we have to like give ourselves and give others and give situations and experiences. And one of the biggest things I talked about not too long ago, is grace over forgiveness. Because sometimes forgiveness is a little bit harder to do, but if we just fall into grace, the energy of grace, then it gives us it's a more it's a more ease and flow way of going towards forgiveness. So yeah, so I am Christina Caldwell. I am the owner and visionary of Here to Give Hope, and I am a coach. I'm a spiritual coach. I am a spiritual reader. I do I conduct oracle and tarot readings, and which is my favorite thing to do. That's my niche. That's I love it. I can do it all day, every day. And I also make jewelry. I have a jewelry line. It's called Dainty Fairy Designs. I make copper jewelry out of crystals. And I'm a mom. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm disabled, so I am. I'm the one that will help you shift your shit in whatever that is. And I'm the one to help you guide you through that process. I've created something that's called the AAA effect, and I help people follow that flow so they can actually change and shift their reality quickly, not for years and years. Like you can within days, within weeks, within months, to be able to shift their reality and shift their thought process. So that's who I am. I'm certified in a couple of different things, NLP. Um, I also am an ordained minister. So if you ever need someone, who's more modern and progressive to marry you, I'm here. We don't jump the brooms, we jump over selenite wands. So I love crystals. Crystals are my favorite thing. They call me the crazy crystal lady. And I'm just really grateful to be here in this space. I love to talk, and I love to help people shift and help uh, um, trigger people to shift into more alignment of who they are and what their journey actually is within this lifetime.
Thank you so much. I love it. This is really great. I think that the crowd, the people listening, is starting to get a sense that we are gracefully in the presence of greatness. People here in different areas. Michael, are you on? Dr. Michael Leslie. I also wanted to introduce him. I see he's on, but
Oh, here he is. He's back.
There it goes.
okay. Can you hear us, Mike, Dr. Michael? Okay, great. If you can, for some reason, I don't see his picture. Do you guys see his picture?
Jason will get it up there in just a second.
Okay.
He's
So
working
yeah,
on it.
got it. So, Doctor, what we're asking is people to just introduce themselves of who they are and what they're up to in the world, just so before we get into the different topics, that people have a sense of who's speaking to them. So, go ahead.
Great. So, my name is Michael Leslie. I've been a world traveler and professor of communication for almost 40 years. And what I'm devoted to now is helping people, assisting people in achieving what they want out of life. I teach a course called The Alchemy of Success that gives you the essential tools you need to produce whatever you want in life, to manifest whatever you want in life. But I really am focused on people realizing their heartfelt dreams. So that's what I do. And I collaborate with people around me who have a similar interest in helping people develop themselves and experience the joy, the bliss, satisfaction, full self expression, vitality. I'm interested in cultivating those things both in myself and in the people that are around me. So that's what I do.
Awesome. Thank you very much. All right, guys. So now I want to actually how I want to set this up. How we're going to set this up every Sunday is I'll bring up topic or ask a question around transformation, and then just hear you guys' different opinions and where you guys are coming from. And I know we don't have a lot of time, but be considerate, be precise, and everybody can it's just a conversation. I don't want it to be a lecture. It's a conversation with great people. And I imagine if you walk into the mind of God, this is what it'll be like. Great conversation happening. Like, whoa, what are they talking about? This is juicy. So, all right. So the first topic I want to talk about, a couple years ago, or wow, over a decade ago, I took a program called Landmark. This is not an advertising for that in any way, nor am I working with them right now. But I learned a lot of great concepts. And one of the concepts I learned was about I broke it down to three different worlds, I call them, but for them it was just the distinctions between what you think. I'm gonna let these guys explain it better than I can. What you think and what actually happens. So I'm just setting up the conversation. Something actually happens in real life, and then there's what we think about it. And then over the years, I created how I feel about it. So I want to basically everybody kind of meshes it together, kind of identify the world of the mental world, the physical world, and the emotional world, and why that would be important to separate them, if it is important, if you guys agree with me. And then I just wanted, everybody give their thoughts on basically the
I don't know. I
three.
think you're starting late in the party already. Like, there's all the stuff outside of us, right? And then there's all the stuff over here where we are, and you kind of got to start where you are, right?
Okay.
Before you can impact out there, you kind of got to make sure that nothing over here is going to get in the way,
Okay. What
right?
does that mean? Because I don't know if the audience is as advanced. So,
Well,
and
here's
anybody
how
can
I like
chime
to describe it, okay? There's our authentic self that's lit up and inspired and in love with people and self-expressed and just wants to play with everybody and you know, that's our authentic self. Out there, self-expressed, having an amazing time with other people, connecting with human beings. And then there's everything that's not that. And I call everything not that your identity. And some methodologies call this not that thing, different things. Like if we're talking in the world of psychology right now, we'd be talking about the ego and we'd have other terms for everything not that. Sociology has certain terms for it, psychology has terms, coaching has terms. So every realm has its own terms for what we're talking about. But ultimately, we're talking about the two pieces of us, the empowered piece and the not empowered piece. Okay. And if you're having a disempowering conversation, what I tell all my clients is important to remember is that's not you. That's not your authentic self. That's the machinery trying to keep you alive and make sure you wake up tomorrow morning.
got it. Got
Right?
it. Got
Our
it.
authentic selves doesn't have disempowering conversations. We're just out there interacting like a kid in a sandbox that doesn't care who we're going to play with. We'll play with everybody. There's no limitations to our authentic self.
Got it. So, Michael Leslie, what is a disempowering conversation? I'm gonna just so get everyone a chance to talk. I'm gonna take a piece of what she said. So we made, like you said, we're too far ahead. So let's go back. So what's actually a disempowering conversation?
Well, for me, any conversation that leads me to position myself as less than what I actually am. I think Sean used the word, who you actually are, your authentic self. Well, I think that's disempowering. I think also there's speech that we say, things that we say about ourselves to ourselves. For example, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not able, I'm not uh, intelligent enough, all those kinds of things. I haven't had a
Oh, looks
Oh,
like we
we lost him.
disappeared on my end. Okay, Christina, go ahead. Is there anything you wanted to add or say?
when
I
you
just
say
back
you
off of
want to
Michael.
be.
Oh, there you
Oh,
go.
you came back.
So that's the domain for me. Things that speaking about myself or speaking about others that has me feel less than or less able to interact or to change my environment or even myself.
Okay, got it. So I distinguished the disempowering conversation, and how does that relate to, like the circles, what happened and what their story is? Is the story always a disempowering one, or what? Kind of unpack that for me if you could.
Well, you started off with these three domains, I think you would call them. One of them, obviously, it's what happened. For example, let's 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 use a graphic example. So, I apply for admission to a university. So that's what, and I get rejected. So that's what happened. I wasn't admitted. So that's the first level. Is what actually happened, right? And then the second level is my interpretation of what happened. Oh, I wasn't admitted to a great university or the one I wanted to go to, and that means that's where the interpretation comes in. That means I'm not smart. They don't like me. I'll never be good enough. And you can take it from there wherever you want to go. So the interpretation of what happened is what we put on top of the simple fact that we weren't admitted, right? And then the third stage of it is how we respond to that emotionally, and usually by action. So some people, because they have concluded, because they weren't admitted, that they're stupid, or then they go to, well, I'm never going to apply to a university again, or I'm going to become a janitor because, like that. So people take that to some action, a result of an interpretation of something that happened, which maybe doesn't mean any of that, right? So those are the three levels in which I understand something happens, an interpretation that you made, and then an action that you take, usually based on a faulty interpretation.
Got it. So, Christina, if you're in agreement with what has been said so far, why do you think it's important to separate those? Because, life is together. Isn't it good that what happens, I can make my decisions or based on what happened in the world? Or is it important to separate those three realms or worlds or identities or whatever that you want to call them, different on the terminology? Is it important to separate them, and why?
I feel like it's important to separate them in the initial, um, like becoming aware of the situation or the experience. So I feel like being able to distinguish, because you were talking about physically, emotionally, mentally, like, and I think that's where my triple A effect comes into play, because it's awareness, acceptance, and then action. So awareness is boom, you're aware, as Dr. Michael said, that I didn't get accepted. That's the awareness. I'm not accepted. And the acceptance piece is probably the biggest piece that people fumble on, is being able to accept that they weren't accepted, and then figuring out what their newfound action plan is from that. But being able to recognize it's not it's not happening to you, it's happening for you. And that's when I feel like being able to separate it mentally of the situation and not having that disempowering conversation with yourself. Because how do I explain this? Um, when we're taking out, let's just say we're taking out the spiritual aspect of this situation, right? Or experience, and we're just really being mental. Like, we have to sit in this space of facts, right? And this is what happens. Sometimes we have experiences and we create them to be true, like Dr. Michael said. Like, we then have these thoughts, like, I'm not good enough because I didn't get accepted. But we really have to debunk all of that and find where the truth actually lies. And that's when we have to come back to self and have more empowering conversations with self, and actually find truth that is connected to that empowering statement. Like, I am good enough because I did X, Y, and Z 10 years ago, or I am great enough. Like, I hope I'm making sense. Um, but
Yeah,
you have to separate them to be able to become more aware and to accept the situation. Then at the end, when it comes to action, I feel like that's when we combined everything, and it has to be in together, because we have to be in the physical, we have to be mental, emotional, and spiritual, and put all these feelings and thoughts and experiences together to create an aligned action plan, even if it's just to debunk a thought, or it is to create an actual plan, like applying to a different university, or something else. Or maybe the university, when you really dig in and scooping out these negative things are not true, when you're finding out that some things aren't true, sometimes people realize that, wait, it's happening for me. I didn't need to get accepted to this school because that's actually not my plan. I've actually been trying to go to this university and put all my energy into going here because I found the truth of, I'm only doing this because of my experiences of what I've been told to do. And now when you really debunk a lot of stuff, you start to recognize, like, maybe it's happened for me not to get to this university because I'm actually supposed to start my own travel business or my own coaching business. So it's really digging through the mental, the physical, and the emotions and the spiritual aspects, then going to the end and combining them all to create the action plan.
Got it. I want to go back around to Sean and Dr. Lace to add to that. But what are the three A's? And maybe somebody can write it in the comments that's listening. What are the three A's you said? Your triple A?
It's awareness,
Uh-huh.
acceptance, and then action.
And then action. Okay. All right. So somebody that's listening, write this in the comment when
We
you
did
write
it already.
something.
It's
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Cool.
You're
So,
ahead of you
okay,
now.
Sean, I'm going to go back to you to kind of, say a bit more about that.
Well, it's really what we're talking about is the difference between reacting and responding.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Both are things that we do as human beings to situations that are occurring in front of us. Right. But one of them will cause more reactions and one of them won't. And
Mm-hmm.
mostly we react most of the time to everything that's going on around us. And, I mean, we have a million different perspectives. If you're in a crowd full of people, you've got all of their thoughts going on in their head, and most people aren't aware and aren't present to most of what you're saying anyway,
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
right? But to bring it back to what you said, there's what happens, and then there's all of the conversational dialogue we have about what happens. And we make it mean a bunch of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So that what happens, okay, isn't the problem. We don't get upset about what happens. We get upset about all of the dialogue of what we're making it mean, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if someone calls me, oh God, this has happened to me. So if a little kid comes up to me and calls me fat, okay, I'll have one reaction to it. Whereas if an adult calls me fat, I'll have a completely different reaction to it. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, kids we give grace to, right? Adults are like, you look at the adult and go, what what, hello? Right? Like I'll tell you guys, I was getting off the plane in Vancouver when COVID hit. I flew back to Vancouver. And I'm always in a wheelchair, you guys, because I only have so many walking points. Like you, Christina, I'm disabled, so I only have so many walking points available per day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the lady behind me is also in a wheelchair. She's probably my size, maybe even a little smaller. And she just had knee surgery. She can't even put any weight on her leg. Okay. And as we're leaving in the wheelchairs, because we're the last to come off, first to get on, but last to get off, this man, right, who's a little bit frustrated because he's had to wait, says, being fat is not a disability. Okay, just as we're coming past him, right? Now, I don't have a problem with what people say. You know me, I'm like a duck, water off a duck's back. Fine, say whatever you want, right? But he said it loud enough that everybody around him heard, right? And so I just looked at my big tummy and I said, "That's okay, baby. Some people are just mean," right? And at which point his face went red and then went white and then went red, right? And then by this time we're past them, okay? Meanwhile, he's getting dirty looks from everybody in the airport now, right? So we get to the elevator and the guy pushing my wheelchair goes, "Are you pregnant?" And I said, "No, but that guy was just a jerk," right? And no one ever calls people on their jerkiness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Usually we're just a reaction instead of a response to what's happening in front of us. Usually I didn't make that mean anything about me, right? I made it mean that he's a jerk and he should be put in his place, right? But usually we make it mean something about ourselves. And now we're in this internal conversation in our head about everything that just happened, and we're making ourselves wrong and we're making him wrong, and like there's just this big drama in our head. It hasn't even left our head yet, and it's already a dramatic party. So
Mm-hmm.
when we're dealing with people and when people around us are saying things and doing things that we don't like, the most damaging thing we can do is react.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the most damaging thing we can do is take an action from a reaction
Mm-hmm.
instead of a response.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to tell you guys, I've done enough. I've worked with thousands of people about this. Any action taken while you're in a state of upset is 100% of the time detrimental,
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
And every Thursday afternoon, we teach people how to disappear upset in 5 minutes. And we do it for free. And we do it because we're committed that if people weren't upset all the time, we'd be looking at a different world. The world
Mm-hmm.
would literally look different if people weren't upset all the time, right?
Yeah.
So we teach them how to disappear the upset. And I'll tell you, if 6-year-olds can learn this thing, okay, then so can anybody else, right? Because that's how it was developed. But more importantly, if you stop taking actions when you're upset, you'll literally cut off half of your breakdowns in life
Mm-hmm.
because we keep taking action when we're upset, and those actions are always detrimental to your overall commitment,
Mm-hmm.
100% of the time.
Like, yep, like R&R said, pause before you actually respond. In even if it's a half a second or a day or a year or 3 days,
Yes,
pause,
yes,
pause,
100%. And
and act.
pause until you can respond instead of react. And like you said, Christine, if that takes a month, fine. That's what it takes.
Mm-hmm.
Because anything you'll say in a reaction or do in a reaction will just make the situation worse.
And then that's when you guys give yourself grace.
That's
Give
right,
yourself
Rick.
So,
for pausing.
That's
if you
right.
guys have gotten anything out of the call so far, make sure you write that and you take that, because my next thing, I see Dr. Michael thinking. I want to let Dr. Michael say that maybe a little something if see you're thinking. What's on your
Once he
mind?
does that, tell Eleanor I'll come back and deal with Dr. Renee's comment after we get from Michael. Okay.
Well, I actually don't have much to add to that. I think you've covered all of the aspects of it. I like the idea that of pausing. I was in a conversation with a colleague uh, just a couple days ago, and we were both in reaction. So I said, okay, this is not going to go anywhere. So I hung up. So it was like, okay, we're taking a break from reacting to each other, right?
Mhm,
And then because we did that, uh, or because I did that, it allowed us space to communicate in a very different way because it wasn't an emotional interaction we were having as much as it was things were on paper, we're dialoguing, you're expressing this, I'm expressing that, and that allowed us to arrive at a different level of communication that was not reactive, right?
mhm.
So yeah, I'm agreeing with everything that you've said.
All right. So before I go to the next topic, though, I would like us, maybe one of you guys or all of you guys, maybe a tool or a little advice or something that someone can walk away with and say, okay, how can I apply this? Now they get it. Okay, yes, we do this to ourselves, but how can I apply this? What can I do
Let
on
me
a
go
day?
back and answer Dr. Renee's question, and she's asking this question for everybody. In the that's listening in. What's the difference between a reaction and a response? Okay, because reactions can be happy. We have a lot of happy reactions to things, right? When the baby is born, we react. When people get married, we react. When your kid comes running in saying they got an A on their paper, we react. There's a lot of happy reactions too, right? The main difference is reaction comes from an internal thought process, right? Rather than, sorry, a reaction is automatic. It's not something you thought about, right? When we react, we're not actually intentionally thinking about our reaction most of the time. Like we don't think, oh, I should tell my kid he did a good job on that paper. When he says, Mommy, I got an A, we don't go, oh, I should tell him he did a good job. No, oh, good job. No, we just automatically react. So reactions aren't necessarily bad. Okay. However, when we're responding, we're coming from intentionality. There's
Mhm,
intentionality attached to it. We've actually thought about it. We're aware, as
mhm.
Christine would say, right? There's an awareness there. Most of the time when we're reacting, we're an automatic machine and there's no awareness.
I like that answer. That's really great because it's very true. Like our responding is an intention, and being able to fall into that intention because you can respond and still be an asshole, but that
That's
was your
right.
intention.
That's
You
right.
intended to be a jerk,
That's
like,
right.
and there's that level of acceptance. Like I've accepted that I wanted to be a jerk, and
I'll take whatever consequence they've got to dish out because I did it intentionally, right?
yeah, so
I'm responsible.
it works both ways. It's just about what your intentions are, and making sure that you're pure with them. And
Yeah.
obviously, the goal is to be have genuine intentions and kind and compassionate intentions. But a lot of people actually are not built that way for some weird reason.
And
Um,
there's only one little bit that I want to put in before we leave the respond conversation, which is I've created responsibility as response ability. In other words, the ability to respond powerfully to things, right? So if you're given a response, it's because you're being responsible for that communication,
Yeah.
right? So responsibility means the ability to respond powerfully to whatever's happening in front of you right then and there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I
Got it.
think like a big tool, like you asked Dan, like a tool to be able to
Yeah,
use.
yeah. If every just one of you guys or all of you, it's just something that somebody can use and apply. Now that we got this, we get it. But what can I do
Right.
with this information? Go ahead.
Um, it sounds a little cliche, but it's actually like a tool you had to use before. You set you set these intentions on responding, but journaling. It really is a super powerful thing to do even before you respond. I've at one point I was so compulsive. I had a little journal and a piece of paper everywhere with me in my car, in the bathroom, in my purse, under my shoe, like anywhere, everywhere. I had because I had to release these thoughts and find the truth in the thoughts. And when you journal, you'll get to a certain point of finding the truth because God then will speak through you when you journal. And as you continue to release things and you start to hear the things and you start to distinguish between the two, and you'll know when you're reacting or you're responding because it comes from different places in our body. A reaction comes from our stomach, a response will come from our mind or brain. We'll feel a tingle here because we're doing this with our intentions and we're spiritually guided to give this response. So, really, one, journaling, and then being in tune with the feelings of your body. So like for example, if I get mad at Dan, I need to really like if we have an argument, I need to be more in tune with my body and know where these feelings are actually coming from because our body will let us know if we're reacting or if we are gracefully responding. So being more in tune with what our body tells us matters too. That's a really good tool.
Guy, thank you for that. Anybody else? Sean, Atul, Michael,
Yeah.
Dr. Michael? Yeah.
Well, first of all, I invite we'll let Dan get the information out, but I invite everybody to come and get trained in how to disappear upset because we do it for free every Thursday afternoon. Okay, if you don't know how to do it, learn it. But there's a pitfall because once you learn how to disappear upset, if you stay upset, that's intentional, right? Okay, because
Yeah.
once you learn how to get rid of it and you're not getting rid of it, that means you're intentionally staying upset. So just be aware of that. Okay. So that's one thing. But the second thing is if you've never done tapping, otherwise known as EMDR, okay, tapping is one of the greatest things that I know of to relieve emotional stress and anxiety. And Dr. Brad Yates on YouTube is the person I send people to just because you
Oh, I
can
love
follow along with what he does and do the exact tapping that he's doing and do your own affirmations. But for the beginner, he's got some really, really great stuff. And tapping is one of those things where, like Christine says, we want to sometimes bring our emotional and our physical and our spiritual and all these pieces together. And tapping is one of the things that does that because it kinetically connects your physical being to whatever conversation is going on in your head.
hmm
Okay. So I use tapping a lot for the relief of stress. And then for those of you who want the quick fix, this is one of those things. My family has used this thing called Rescue Remedy, which is a Bosch flower formula. It's like a herbal remedy for over 50 years. I wouldn't even think about going to a funeral or someplace where things are going to be emotional without taking a little bottle of this stuff with me. It's like magic juice. But more importantly, it just helps maintain and equalize all of your emotions, right? So there are lots and lots of things out there. Most importantly, if you're not feeling great about stuff, consider that there's a conversation that you need to have a conversation with a coach to deal with whatever conversation's going on in your head because your head's just stopping you from moving forward.
hmm
Just is.
Thank you. Thank you. So before I go to the next topic, I don't know if Michael Leslie wanted to add anything so we can wrap up this part and start basically a quick other little conversation.
Go ahead, Dan.
Okay, okay, great. So, and I think this is really great. This conversation is called transformational versus informational learning, or information versus transformational. And why do I want to introduce this here and around this call? Because people are getting information. People are, okay, this is cool. This is all that stuff. But so it's some kind of education. What's the difference, and maybe why even it's important to differentiate this between informational learning, you're getting a lot of information, versus transformational learning? What is the difference, and why is it important to know that? So,
Well, you might even call it experiential learning versus instructional learning.
right, and which would you name is that? So experiential. So between like the two, like
Transformational is experiential in process, right? Whereas informational learning is just taking in information. But do you guys know how our school systems was set up? Like how our educational system was set up? So the industrial revolution happened, right? And so there was all these factories now to build stuff and create stuff. And they needed people to work in the factories. And they needed those people to know enough math and reading to run the machines. So they created schools to teach people the basics so that they could have, knowledgeable workers. Our school systems weren't set up to teach people to be the best human beings on the planet. That wasn't the purpose. We had religion for that, right? The purpose was basically to teach them to follow instructions, informational learning. Do this and then do this and then do this and then do this, right? And then, we hit the 60s, okay, 1960, and everything shifted because new transformation started happening. The informational revolution came instead of the industrial revolution. Now we have the informational revolution, and there's so much information coming out and coming at us. You guys, you can go onto YouTube and learn anything these days. Like anything can be learned by watching YouTube, right? That doesn't implement it. Only transformational learning implements on the court, transforms something, even if only transforms something in your head so that you see things differently and work differently on the court.
got it.
Okay. So I'll use one example and then we'll get what everybody else thinks about this. And the example that I always use is this distinction that we call balance on a bike, right? So when we learned to ride a bike, usually we either had training wheels or somebody held our bike because we didn't have balance. Even when you learn to skate, for those of you who are north enough, and not Dr. Michael, but anybody who lives north and goes skating, when you learn to skate, you don't have balance on skates. So you got to hold on to stuff or hold on to people because we don't have that distinction called balance. And then there we are, we're riding the bike when someone's holding the bike and we're riding it. And in a moment, boom, all of a sudden we've distinguished balance for ourselves. And now we're going. Now, the interesting part is that unless you have a head injury, because you have distinguished balance on a bike or skates for yourself, that can never be taken away. So even if you don't get on a bike again for another 20 years, you get on a bike 20 years later, within a few moments, you're going, you're fine because you distinguish balance for yourself. Like I said, unless you had a head injury. Don't go yelling at me in the comments. I'm saying if you don't have a head injury, right? You don't have to relearn. When someone becomes a mom, they become a mom. They don't have to relearn becoming a mom unless they have a head injury. They now relate to themselves as a mom, right? So when we put into practice for ourselves any concept of something that we're learning and we distinguish something for ourselves, in reality on the court, we've now transformed something in ourselves and we now can't go backwards. We can't unbecome the person that we now are. It just doesn't work that way.
Got it. Wonderful. So, are you saying that, and the other guys can answer too, that learning to ride a bike is a transformational experience and not an informational one?
100%.
Yeah, because it's transformational is implementation, and like Sean said, it is something that cannot be taken away. So informational learning is just info dumps. Like even here, people I feel like it's also distinguishable between the person and how they receive it, because even this right here, this platform right now today, this can be considered, someone can take all this information and just use it as information and
Yep.
do nothing with it. Granted, they can never now not hear this information, but they can let it fade away into the ethers of their subconscious.
They
right?
can file it on row 8888888888.
Right. So at this point, it's just an informational session for them. But then what's going to happen is some people are actually going to create this session as a transformational session, and they're going to take this stuff, they're going to go look up stuff, then they're going to go add it to the brain, and then they're going to go journal, and they're going to go to Sean's class on Thursday so they can realize that's all transformational. And now none of that can be taken back because now you've changed from this session.
Mhm.
That's what I feel like the difference is between transformational and informational, is that even though you learn when you get information, but there's still, it's a fine line between actually transforming from the information. So it's more informational into transformative learning, if that makes any sense.
All right, Dr. Michael, did you want to add something to this? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I do actually. So I distinguish three types of learning. Actually, the informational piece I think we've covered pretty much. I'll use an example because I think that'll make it clear for at least first for me. So information is when we go back to what we started the conversation with. Something happens. So you have data. This didn't work. I tried to accomplish X in the case when we were speaking about getting admitted to a university, and it didn't happen. So that's information that you have. It's data, right? This is something in the real world. Then there's the interpretation of what happened. So the interpretation is what gives you an opportunity to transform. So your first interpretation might have been, I'm bad, I'm not good enough, they don't like me, all of that stuff that we talked about. But you could transform in your thinking about what happened. That's where transformation takes place is, oh, I've been thinking that this means that I'm bad. It could mean that, as our first speaker mentioned, it could mean that this is maybe not the right thing for me to do. It could mean that I should try to do it again. I should actually do something different when I apply the second time. It could mean that I am actually a winner because I found out what not to do to be admitted to a university. So it could mean a number of things. And that transformational piece allows you to deal with what has happened in a way that you would not have dealt with it before. You might have been autocritical. You don't have to be autocritical when you fail. You could actually be celebratory. Remember going back to, here's another good example, I think, because it's been used many, many times. When Edison was trying to create the electric light, he failed 10,000, that's what they tell us, 10,000 times, right? Now, if it was just information, well, I guess I don't know how to do this. This is never going to happen. It's not possible. But what he said when they asked him, he said he had a transformed context for understanding the failure. For him, it wasn't failure. It was, oh, I've discovered 10,000 ways that don't work. Now I can try a different way. And eventually he found the way that worked. So again, transformation is move the way in which you interpret your life, your experience, the world, what happens to you. If you shift that to something that it's empowering for you, that gives you energy, that gives you a way to move forward, that gives you a different interpretation of your experience, then you are able from that new perspective, or the technical word for from that new context, to transform what you do, what actions do you take. One last thing, because it's been brought up. So, experiential is a way of learning something. Transformation is a way in which you look at something, from which you approach something. And information is just the data that you get to work with, which fortunately we have lots of data, right? So we can have fun all day long with all the data we're accumulating, and then shift that. How am I going to interpret this data? Can I interpret it from the perspective that actually serves me and others rather than, to use the word that's common in parlance nowadays, this empowers me, makes it possible for me to do less rather than to do more.
Well, let me ask you guys something, because you guys have given examples of not getting accepted at university, that guy who was a jerk at the airport, Now, isn't it as detrimental, maybe not, when something good happens? Let's say you got accepted to the university and then you created a story about that as well. Or is it only on the bad side that we want to get rid of, or
Yeah,
something?
we're always making stuff up, Dan. Sometimes we're making up good stuff, sometimes we're making up bad stuff, but we're making it up all the time.
Okay, now,
I
but
Right.
mean, if
is
you're
it?
going to make stuff up, you might as well make up good stuff
Yeah, so I feel like it would be better to do it on the good side than the negative side.
because you're
Like the
doing it
negative side,
anyway.
yeah, because the negative side is like, it's like language when we talk to the universe. Is we the, it's interesting because the universe doesn't respond to anything negative or positive. It responds to what you feel is true.
Hmm. Yeah,
That's all that matters is what you feel is true.
but you
That's
feel it's true. Got
what you
it.
feel is true. And then you create the trueness to be there. So, because again, it could be true that someone feels that they're worthless. They feel that and they believe it. And
Yeah,
then
we
what's going
can't
to
tell
happen?
them their feelings are inaccurate.
Exactly. So, what's going to happen then with that? The universe is just going to keep giving them evidence and experiences to show them that that's true.
Okay,
Here you
so
go. Here's people in your
the
life that
danger in
are going
that.
to show you you're worthless.
Okay, so the danger that might be in that, which this is not part of the, the plan, but it just morphed into the conversation, is that, somebody brings me a piece of cake. And I'm like, wow, this person, and, if it's a woman, I'll probably be like, wow, maybe she likes me. And I create this whole story that
Yeah.
maybe she just had an extra piece and didn't want to throw it away and it has nothing to do with it. And now I created a whole story and I'm like, oh yeah, and I'm, doing my stuff. And am
It
I
has nothing to do with how cute you are.
setting my maybe I could be setting myself up to be hurt later, maybe not, I don't know, but
Mhm.
so I
Well, if
wouldn't.
that conversation empowers you in the moment to give you the courage to actually communicate and say, hey, you know, would you like to go out for coffee or take it to the next step? If it gives you the courage to take it to the next step, then great.
And then
Because
I
you're
Also,
found out I was delusion after all.
yeah, you
but
can work out your delusion later.
right, this is true. But also remember, again, to my point from earlier, is being in tune with your body. That feeling is going to come from a certain place. And when we're in tune with our body, it make we when we're really it's a practice, okay? Let me tell you. It's a deep practice and it's a long practice. And it's an everyday practice because it's just when we're in tune with that feeling, when you have that thought, you're gonna know when you are literally living as an intentional human being intentionally every freaking day. You're gonna know that you're gonna distinguish that feeling in your body because you're gonna be like, I don't know. And then something's gonna tell you. Then, since you're so intentional, you're not gonna sit in that delusion. You're gonna actually get clarity. You're gonna take action on that, and you're gonna ask her, "Hey, I like that you gave this to me. Do you like me or whatever, or whatever questions that you want to ask in that point. But the goal is to again find truth in the feelings, whether it's in the physical, whether it's in the mental, emotional, spiritual. It's to find truth in the truth. To find truth in those feelings. Does that make sense? It's a really deep practice. Like
And
it's crazy
so
being an
the
intentional
time
human.
the,
This
the time is running so fast, and I want to make sure that you guys get a chance to, invite people to your calls that you're having or different calls that you guys are having. So people that maybe are just discovering this now can have access to that. All the great value you're giving. But I do want to say in the conversation, in the world of transfer, I'm going back to the transformational versus learning. There's some, I've heard it said, what you know it makes little difference, right? What you know is not that important. First time I heard that, I was almost offended. I mean, what I know is not makes no difference at all. So because people spend a lot of money. My parents helped me go to school, and I, worked hard to get a scholarship and to go learn all these things. I want to keep learning, and you're telling me what I know means nothing, which if you say that to some people with maybe great PhDs and great stuff, might also be offended. So how would you guys, and somebody's probably listening now is like, what do you mean what I know makes a difference? What does that mean in the world of transformation? That what you know makes no difference or little difference? And I think once I got this, I became less intimidated by people who know a lot, right? Because it's like no. So help me explain this to our audience Michael Leslie, go ahead if you want to go first.
Yeah, I think I'll just jump in on that. So I don't know. Well, I suppose some people say that what you know doesn't make any difference. I think that normally those are people that don't know anything, so maybe that's easy for them to say. But certainly there's data makes a huge difference. Having objective data, or at least some data that you're operating from, rather than the fantasies in your mind, but what people think about you, what they say about you. No, there are things actually that actually happen in life that are there for you to work with, to consider. So I wouldn't say it doesn't make any difference. I would say that what makes a difference is how you use what you know. That's why we're having a conversation about what I call context, or what some people call transformation, how you relate to all of these things that you know. Give you a concrete example quickly. So I know a lot of languages, and I've traveled the world, and I've had intercultural experiences, and I've examined my all of that. So, and then there's, okay, so I was using that as what? To teach students in classes. They could take notes and regurgitate that stuff to me to show that they also knew. But I shifted from having knowledge of those things to applying them to assist other people in transforming their lives. That's the difference. It's not, I didn't forget how to speak French, but now I can speak to people in French about what they want to do with their lives. So data knowledge is a good thing. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater just because you've learned something about transformation. You have an opportunity now to use what you know in a new way, in a way of
All right.
service. Uh,
Yeah.
Sean, do you want to say something?
You go first, Christina.
Okay. I'm gonna like Dr. Renee said as well. It's like, and to Dr. Michael's point is as well, is it's about action. And I think what they mean is not literal, but in the sense of, great, you have all this knowledge, but then what are you doing with it? Like, how are you implementing it? How are you taking action with it? How are you helping others obtain that same knowledge that you have? How are you making change around you and within you with the knowledge that you have? So I grew up knowing there's a lot of people I knew that just were super well at a school. They were great at school, but they had no skills outside of school. No skills, no real world skills, like even literally to the point of pumping gas in their car. So to that point of knowledge is nothing until you like it's really meaningless because you have all this knowledge, but then where are you at everywhere else in your life outside of this knowledge, in the real life experiences, in the day-to-day nuances that you have to do and complete every day, in your emotional intelligence, in your companionship, in the way that you relate with people, because knowledge is nothing unless, again, as we all I feel like agree, is nothing unless you take action towards it and use it and help other people obtain that same knowledge and help them take action on that knowledge. That's when it's become fascinating and widespread. Otherwise you're just a gatekeeper.
Okay, so let me say my little piece. And by the way, we're like at 1 hour. I want to respect you guys as guests. I'm sure the audience, are if we go a little bit over, the audience is fine because they're not committed to 100% being here. So I want to be respectful of that. If you need to leave, but if you can stay a little bit longer so we can finish this conversation. I'd love to hear what Sean has to say. And there's a couple things I'd like to say too about the topic. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And if you have to leave, I totally understand. As we came, the time just flew by. And this is what I love when having these great conversations. Time just flies by. Okay, so let me just say one thing before Sean talks about the conversation. I want to add my 2 cents as well. So it seems like Dr. Michael and Christina are saying that both of them are good. Informational learning is great, and then transformational learning is also great. What comes up for me is that when I see I think that sometimes informational learning can be a hindrance to the transformation. Like you get to a point where you know too much. I remember even in church, or when I was like, I know too much about stuff that now it's like it's not impacting me. or somebody said like Dan, you're not the one to coach me because I know too much about you, stuff like that. So having a lot of the information can be because in transformation, you want the new information you're getting is not always fitting with the old information. So just accumulating more and more information, I find. Hold
Yeah,
on,
you
Sean.
gotta look at information as ice cream, man. You got chocolate ice cream, you got vanilla ice cream, you got strawberry ice cream, right? Different kinds of, learning,
But
right?
sometimes the information
Or
you have
information.
is an illusion already. So it's almost like for me, suspending belief, and I say coachable, being coachable is basically what you just put it aside. Okay, I don't know anything. Because if you already think that, okay, this is the fact, it might be an illusion, might not be true. And then now you're not allowing the new information to come that might allow the transformation. So for me,
I
when I
just think you're complicating this too much, dude.
yeah, well, it's a reality for
All of the analytical thinkers out there are thinking exactly the way you are. They're trying to analyze, how do I get the biggest bang for my buck out of whatever it is I'm learning, right? Like, but not everybody has that as a goal. Some people don't have a goal of having an extraordinary life. Some people's goal is just to have an okay life, a
Mm-hmm.
fine life, a mediocre life, to be content.
Mm-hmm.
And in that case, informational learning might serve them just fine, right? So there's not a right or a wrong inside because it takes both. It
mm,
takes both kinds of learning to be really effective at something.
Mm-hmm.
If you just learn it, but you don't practice it, you're not going to be effective, right? If you practice it with no learning, well, we see how some of those recipes turn out. That's not very good either, right? So, it's about having the right amount. It's kind of like, all those people that say, no, you shouldn't eat sugar. Sugar isn't the bad part, right? It's the amount, right? It's us overindulging in things. It's very little that if we just took it in moderation is going to hurt us or harm us over the long haul, right?
Moderation,
Learning is
baby.
like that. It's not either or,
got it.
right? It's I'm going to take this much of this and this much of this, and I'm going to create something really great that will help me.
Got it.
Balance.
Balance. Well, I want to
Balance,
thank
very
you
good.
guys so much for coming here. I feel like my first podcast was a success. I had great support since
Woo!
I'm here. And the great thing is, people can keep watching this. And I want to invite anybody listening to check us out. Michael Desi has his call. Sean has several calls. Christina has her call. And maybe just ask, guys, give 1 minute about what your call is about and why people should come to it, and invite, kind of like an invitation for people to come and join your calls that you do every week. So whoever wants to go first, and then we'll end it after that.
Okay, I go. Oh no, Dr. Michael, you go. I saw you with your little hand thing. Go ahead.
Well, you're more perceptive than I am. So here, my call is very simple. I think that all of us have a heartfelt desire, something that I know, it's given to us to do in life. And sometimes we get frustrated. Or even give up. It's like, it's not going to happen. I can't do it. You go and do something else, but not your heartfelt desire. My call is about having people, and it's actually a podcast, it's no longer a call. It's about having people discover the tools to make their heartfelt desire a reality. That's what is it? What do you need to know? What are the essentials that you need to know to transform your heartfelt desire into reality? And it's the basic principles. So that's what the call is about. And we have people come on the show who have done that. They talk about their success in accomplishing what they wanted to accomplish in life. It makes it exciting for me. And then they give you some tools, they give you some tips, they give you some insight into how they accomplish their dream. So that's Tuesday nights, 7 o'clock on. It's on Facebook. It's also the connection to it is on the Inspiration channel, so you can find it there. Or you can just go to my website, drmichaelleslie.com, and click on the link from there to Tuesday nights at 10, I'm sorry, 7. And it's called The Alchemy of Success, How to Get What You Really Want Out of Life. So I hope to see some of you there.
Yeah, 7 Eastern time, guys. So those on the West Coast. Okay, thank you, Christina.
So my calls are Wednesdays. For now, they're Wednesdays at 6:30. I might change it. But they're Wednesdays at 6:30. And right now, I'm really going through the process of the AAA effect. And we're, helping people understand the awareness and the steps, and then the acceptance and the steps for that, and then the steps for action. And then, I do spiritual readings. I'm trying to get to the point of, maybe giving a reading for somebody. And I also help people in the call. With their business. I really do, like Sean, I really do enjoy helping business owners shift whatever it is that needs to be shifted within their business. And for me, it's usually their spiritual connection and alignment to their business. And then because once we get in alignment with our spiritualness and our all that fun stuff, we things come to us so much easier and so much quicker and with so much more ease, and we get to feel more into it. And so I help people feel more and live in more of a feeling. um so I'll help you guys. I've picked on a couple of people in the calls to help them strategically in with their businesses. So yeah, it's fun, it's open, it's it's just a conversation, and that I think that for me, my calls are more so like, let's just conversate. What do you need to fix? What do you need to shift? Because that's what I'm here. I'm here to help you shift your shit. That's what I do. Whatever it is. It can be weight, it can be people, it can be feelings, it can be experiences, whatever it is. I'm here to help you shift it.
Got it. Thank you. And we'll put all that information in the inspiration community as well. All right. Last but not least, Sean Bierman.
Well, every Friday we do Live Coaches Corner in the Facebook group. The Facebook group is called Inspired, Empowered, and Unstoppable. And I did
Fun.
put a link to the Facebook group in the chat already, and we'll live stream in there every Friday morning at 9 o'clock. And for those of you who are in Dan's community, you can actually have access to listen into all the coaching that happens after the live stream. So feel free to hop in anytime for either the first half or the second half, and we'll get you that information.
Awesome, cool. So for those of you who are listening that don't even know what the inspiration community is, I'm encouraging you guys to join. There are levels. This is just to get started, but I want you guys to go deeper and deeper. So hire a coach. Hiring a coach is investing in yourself. That's what it is. And loving yourself, the action of that is hiring a coach. Okay, so that you can go deeper. So you can have somebody hold your hand a little bit longer, understand. So we're getting you guys in the calls. Okay, listen, hear, but there's a deeper level of just coming on these podcasts, of hearing this stuff. And I'm encouraging you guys to get in touch, come be part of the community, reach out to the coaches directly. They all have great programs. I would say everything works and nothing doesn't. If you don't do anything, it doesn't work. And you can't do everything in life, but find that, that this is okay. If I do this, I know it's gonna shift a lot, and focus and get into deeper and deeper into the work, so you can get deeper and deeper into transformation. All right, that's all I have to say. Thank you guys for coming on the show, and thank you everybody that was listening. I love you guys, and see you next Sunday at noon. Every Sunday we're gonna do this until Jesus comes back.
Hey, bye guys. Thank you guys so much. This is so much fun.
All right.
It's a pleasure to be here, Dan. Thanks for the invitation.
All right.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching the Grace and Inspiration Podcast with Dan Nzinga. See you next time.